Today's story comes from the Reddit user Pancakes420. Deadly Chocolate. Chocolate is a well-known and loved candy. Some even say that chocolate can give you the feeling of falling in love. But not this chocolate. This one time, my three friends and I were selling chocolate for school in my grandmother's building because we knew most of the people in the building. We always sold a lot of chocolate in that building because it had 15 floors with 5 apartments on each floor. So we spent a few hours walking around and selling chocolate and talking to a few residents in the building. We decided to take a break after the 10th floor, so we went to my grandmother's apartment to get some snacks. My grandma had made us food and talked about our neighbors. She told us that there was a new resident in the building. She lives on the 13th floor. She's a little old woman who lives alone with her cat. My grandmother wanted us to go to visit her and make her feel welcome, and even made some soup for us to bring her. So we decided to just go straight up to this old woman's apartment and then continue selling chocolate afterwards. Once we arrived at the door, we noticed that she had decorated it in an unusual way. She had sticks and pine cones taped to her door, and her welcome mat had a circle of different rocks around it. We thought it was unusual, but cool nonetheless. We knocked lightly on the door, asked to not disturb her. She immediately opened the door, as if she already had her hand on the handle. She welcomed us all inside and showed us her apartment. There were a few boxes still laying around, but she seemed to be almost done moving in. She had beautiful antique dolls on every shelf in her apartment. There was a porcelain doll in every room, even the bathrooms. She told us the name of each doll and told us that she's been collecting them for many years. I gave her the soup that my grandma made and she thanked us for coming. She asked if we were all living in the building as well. One of my friends said yes, and I informed her that my grandma lives here and I visit her often. We even told her that we were selling chocolate bars for school. Upon hearing this, she became excited. She told us that she absolutely loves chocolate, and she even makes some fresh on special occasions. Two of my friends went back to my grandma's apartment to retrieve the chocolate boxes, while my other friend and I stayed to talk about chocolate recipes. The old woman told us that it's a special recipe. It's been in her family for generations. She showed us part of the recipe, but since it was a secret recipe, we weren't allowed to see the whole thing. Once my friend returned, the old woman bought 2 chocolates of each flavor. And she bought each of us a bar as well. After finishing our chocolate, we all got ready to leave and sell more chocolate. But the old woman told us to come back later that day and she'll give us each a surprise. So we left and continued to sell the chocolate to everyone else in the building. After we had finished going to each person's apartment, we went back to my grandmother's apartment to count how many bars and boxes we had left to sell. After we concluded that we only had 1 box and 25 more bars to sell, we started counting the money we earned. When we finished, we just started talking and playing video games, completely losing track of time. It was almost time for everybody to go home, and we hadn't gone back to the old woman's apartment. So we got ready to go back upstairs when we heard a knock. When my grandma answered the door, it was the old woman. She had come to give us our surprise. But how did she know where my grandma lived? I never told her what apartment it was. Maybe my grandma told her? The old woman handed each of us a pleasantly wrapped piece of chocolate. She told us to not eat it till after dinner, as to not ruin our appetites. After thanking my grandma for the soup, she quickly left, and with that, each of us went home. After dinner, I was craving something sweet. Then I remembered the chocolate. As I unwrapped it, I had an uneasy feeling, but I ignored it because chocolate is chocolate and chocolate's delicious. After placing the chocolate in my mouth, I was amazed by the taste. I had never tasted something so amazing and I wanted more. The next day, I felt very irritated. Every little thing seemed to bother me, but I didn't care. I was too occupied thinking about that chocolate. I rushed back to the old woman's apartment to ask for more, and to my surprise, all my friends were already there. They all had the same idea. The old woman was already cooling the chocolate by the time I arrived. She gave us each one more, and we all devoured it. The taste made us crave more, so she gave us more, and more, and more. For the rest of the day, we stayed in the old woman's apartment, the allure of the chocolate being too strong for us to leave. For some reason, none of us talked to each other. We just didn't feel like interacting, we just wanted more chocolate. Nobody was allowed in the kitchen while the old woman made the chocolate. After all, it was her secret recipe. So we looked at her dolls and played with her cat, but none of us spoke to each other. It wasn't like us to act like this. I usually have something to say, but I just wanted chocolate. It felt like we waited forever for the chocolate to be finished, but it was worth it. We all devoured several pieces as we started to argue because one of my friends had eaten more chocolate than the rest of us. We started fighting over the chocolate. It was making us crazy, but it was too good to stop. The old lady stopped our fight and told us to apologize to each other. And once we did, she gave us an equally divided amount of chocolate. I hadn't realized how late it got, but I had to go home. I was furious and I needed more chocolate. I begged for more, but the next batch wouldn't be done till much later. That night I ate nothing. I only wanted that chocolate. Nothing else could appease my hunger. The next day I returned to find only 2 of my friends at the old woman's apartment. I didn't care, because that meant more chocolate for me. I also noticed a new doll on the old woman's shelf. After eating an alarming amount of chocolate, I still wanted more. I knew this wasn't normal, but I needed that chocolate. It felt like if I stopped eating this chocolate, I would die. So I stayed all day and ate chocolate. The next day, I came back and found only one of my friends at the old woman's apartment. I was delighted because that meant even more chocolate for me. At some point during the day, I felt a horrible pain in my stomach. I rushed to the bathroom and threw up. All this chocolate was not good for me. My body wasn't reacting very good to having nothing but chocolate. While I was in the bathroom, I heard what sounded like muffled screams, so I quietly went to find the source. There was one room which was hidden behind a cabinet, and inside I could hear the muffled screams. I went to open the door, but before I could, I smelled the delicious chocolate. My mind went blank as I stuffed my mouth full of chocolate. I couldn't control myself, no matter how hard I tried. No matter how hard I tried to stop, I just couldn't. After eating all the chocolate, I went back to the door. I had to see what was making the noise, and carefully opening the door, I had seen one of my friends tied up on the floor, and she was covered in
chocolate.
My senses started to blur. I could barely hear her screams anymore. All I wanted was the chocolate. I was about to take a small bite of her arm when I snapped back to reality. I quickly untied her and tried to get her out. She almost tripped on a half-made porcelain doll. We were about to make it to the front door when my other friend smelled the chocolate. She lunged at us trying to bite the chocolate off. I tried to protect my friend when a voice made me freeze in my tracks.
Don't you want more chocolate?
The old lady snickered. Everyone was now focused on her, her body twisted into a horrific-looking creature. I had to get out of there. I sprinted for the door, still holding my chocolate-covered friend. Just as the door swung open, the creature grabbed her. I didn't know what to do, so I went back for them. The creature had put her on the counter and was getting ready to chop her up. And my other friend was sitting there, in a pot of melting chocolate. That's when I pulled one of her shelves down on top of her. It knocked her down, so I grabbed both of my friends and bolted towards the door. Behind me, I could hear the creature yell out.
You can run, but you'll live with the guilt that you ate one of your friends. You'll never enjoy chocolate again.
The next day, there was a fire in the building, and according to the police, everybody got out alive, except the old woman on the 13th floor and my friend who lived in the building. Nobody knew the truth except me and my friends, and although we escaped unharmed physically, we were hurt mentally. And all of us never ate chocolate again, because we knew that she was still out there, just waiting for one of us to slip up and eat another piece of her deadly chocolate. And I knew this because I found a doll that looks like my dead friend on my doorstep. And next to it was a doll that looked like me with a piece of chocolate taped to it.
Sweet, delicious chocolate.
The end. This has been Gray Stories. I hope you liked